listening to the Hometown Losers, the St. Louis Sports Podcast, with Josh, Adam, and OJ.
Hey everybody, welcome back here to the Hometown Losers Podcast. I'm joined as always by Adam and OJ for session number 17. Gentlemen, how are we doing today?
Hey, doing great here. How are you doing?
Oh, can't complain in this rainy ass weather. OJ, how about you, bud?
I'm doing very well.
Good to hear. Good to hear. Well, let's start off here with how we always do and talk about the Blues. Although we got some different things to talk about here that kind of surprising, as we know this is not really a topic that we're having a lot of fun talking about with them losing as much as they have been. Just a quick update here. So we are currently projected for the 9th overall pick right now. So we've gone, if you will, down a little bit because we were projected at 7th or 8th, I believe, last week, I think, right? I think it was at least 8th or something like that.
Yeah, we're 32 and 33 after tonight's win, I think.
Correct, yeah, and that just went final, beating the Red Wings 4-3. I also want to point this out too. We do have the 27th and the 29th pick projected, at least for this upcoming draft. And the 29th pick, they're saying the projection is Jaden Perron. Just saying it. I thought that was hilarious. Like Jaden Schwartz and David Perron.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a nice little mixture of a player, huh?
That's funny.
Yeah, exactly. Can you take the best of both of them? Yeah, exactly.
That's funny.
Yeah, and they and if I remember correctly, Jaden Perron also was a left winger, which both of them were primarily left wingers throughout their careers. So I thought that would be pretty funny.
That's cool.
Yeah.
But the biggest conversation piece that we definitely have around the Blues is Joel Hofer. I can't even say his name correctly. I don't know why. But obviously he got the start tonight. The guy is just on a tear. Before tonight, because again that just went final. He had 3 starts, 2 0-1. So that one was the overtime loss. He's got a .959 save percentage and a 1.32 goals against. Mm-hmm. I mean, what are you guys' impression of this kid so far?
Yeah, in those first 2 games, he stopped 65 of 67 shots. I mean, that's pretty good compared to what we're used to, right? So it's kind of unusual to see, the Blues, we almost had a complete shutout the other night, obviously, other than the having to step out for I think it was a skate issue, but so other than that, he would have had a complete shutout. So it's been kind of incredible to see for sure.
Yeah.
If only we could have, if this was a couple months ago, but.
Yeah. I mean, the main thing I've noticed about him, it's only a few games. So, first of all, it seems like at least in maybe the first game or two, the team kind of played a little bit more of a solid game in front of him. But one of the things that's impressed me the most is that he's not giving up a lot of rebounds. He pretty much saves a shot and then he hangs on to it. So that's certainly more than Binnington, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
And that was the thing about it that kind of surprised me more than anything else too, was the rebound control. I watched the overtime loss, or really the shootout loss, I should say, against Detroit. But as you said, OJ, his rebound control seemed very good. And when a shot was coming, especially from the point, and it's just the basic things that I think that when you become a veteran goaltender, you tend to get away from. So points coming from the shot, it's almost direct on, right? And what a lot of veteran goaltenders do is they just pretty much try to smother it, right? But they're killing it in front of the net instead of turning their bodies away from the net. So just in case they don't trap it, the puck is now out of a dangerous area. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so Binnington did this a lot when he was, coming up as a rookie. And again, I don't see him doing that nearly as often. Sometimes it's there, but it's not 100%. And, he'll push out. It's almost pushing straight out into the slot rather than, trying to push away and try to get it to the corners, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. And I think that's a very good, a take for it is that, you have a guy that's trying to obviously show an organization that he deserves to be up here, and that he obviously, is playing really well because now he's 3-0-1.
Mm-hmm.
I would have to look up, his statistics or whatever because he let in three tonight? Yeah, three.
Yeah, it's definitely
but,
not
again,
as easy to find stats for minor hockey. That's for sure.
I thought I had some pulled earlier. I'll see if I can.
Well, I'm thinking of like some of the advanced stats that people would like to look at more these days.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what I was trying to find even before before today's session was I was able to get the basic stuff, like save percentage and goals against, you know what I mean? But I'm not able to like get some of those more advanced stuff, as you said, because it's just not really readily available in the AHL or, even beyond the NHL for that matter, pretty much anywhere. Because like even now, if I try to go into his like just to take a look at his stats, NHL hasn't even updated any of the stuff yet. It's still showing the exact same stuff that I looked at it, like an hour and a half ago.
Right.
So
yeah. I got you.
Well, I'm probably just go faded. But let me ask you guys, this is an interesting time, right? So we saw, Jake Allen was supposed to be the guy. He didn't do anything in 2019, right? Didn't do great. Then we brought this random guy in called Jordan Binnington, our fourth goaltender, and obviously the rest is history. End up winning the cup on the guy's shoulders and stuff like that. Would it be kind of the same situation? Now, obviously, we're not going to get to the Stanley Cup playoffs. We're not going to get to the Stanley Cup and stuff. But let me ask you here, and I'll start with you, OJ. Should Hofer even start over Binnington next year? Or when Binnington comes back from his suspension, should he – and I think actually Binnington is back,
he's
if I remember
now,
correctly.
Yeah. They just
officially back, but they gave him to
Hofer,
so.
Yeah. But should Hofer start over Binnington going forward?
Yeah. I don't think – probably not right out of the gate, but he's going to be up here next year. I mean, he's on a one-way contract starting next year. So he's going to be like – I could see it becoming more of a 1A, 1B tandem rather than starter backup scenario for sure.
Kind of like what we had with Brian Elliott and Yaroslav Halak back in the day.
Yeah, especially because Binnington has shown that he's better when he's fresher also.
Yep.
So it makes sense to me to give more of a timeshare to both of them than especially since Hofer's cheap. So then you wind up getting like actually a decent dollar amount that you're spending on your goaltender tandem. So I'd say bring him up and do the 1A 1B thing and then ride the hot hand once you get later in the season and you need points, that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah, I definitely think that brings up a very good point that most people don't know is that Hofer, if I remember reading this correctly, Hofer re-signed earlier in the season and it was for a one-way. So I think that Doug Armstrong envisioned that Greiss was going to be just a stopper for that time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just a 1-year deal because he's only on the 1-year deal. And it's not like he is really impressed either. I mean, Greiss has done okay. Don't get me wrong, not to take anything away from him, but he hasn't like fully impressed, right?
Well, I was wondering if eventually
he's done what they signed him for. He's been a solid backup.
Yeah. I mean, and he's just that. He's a backup, right? Adam, what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say I think I agree to your point as far as having an AB tandem for Benny and also for Hofer, but I think that the Greiss is going to be a good backup whenever if there is an injury he can come in still, if need be. So I think that having that third man is definitely important for us to have for sure. But I think that giving Hofer, an opportunity, let's just see, obviously there's not much for us to lose, so to speak, for the rest of the season. So let's give him more of an opportunity, give him some ice time, so to speak, but get him in net more often and, just see how well he performs. I think, it's at this point, it's his audition, so to speak, to see if he could be a starter for us potentially.
The only downfall to that is I really don't see Doug Armstrong carrying 3 goalies on the NHL roster. So that means that to have Hofer up, you're going to have to put Greiss down on waivers because he is he's only got a 1-way contract, right? So to move him down, he will be available and exposed to waiver.
The 1-way doesn't start till next season.
Oh, dude, you're right. I completely overlooked
it's an
overlooked that. You're 100%
extension, I
right.
guess you'd call it. Yeah.
Well, but no. But that even still stands, right? So if we want Hofer, say, just as our backup, and we're going to move away from Grice for the rest of the season, we would have to put Grice on waivers. So what I was actually saying is 100% correct. We can, whenever there's an injury to Bennington or to Grice, obviously recall and send down
recall
Hofer,
him back up, and that's what they should do. Correct. He could could be our backup in that sense, 100%.
Yeah, it's easy enough to send Hofer down, though, is my point, at least for now.
Yeah, exactly. And in next year, it's going to look different. I think it'll be Bennington, as you said, OJ, Bennington 1, Hofer 2, right? And obviously
and
have him
be our backup.
Yeah. Well, Grice, I think, is not even in the picture anymore. I don't think we're going to re-sign Grice.
Gotcha.
Well, no, because he would be an AHLer, right? Because you're only going to carry 2 goaltenders, and you're not going to sign Grice to be an NHL or AHL goalie. He most likely feels that he can be, at least a backup somewhere else. So I don't know if he would sign that or not.
Well, another interesting thing about it that I've kind of just realized is that Hofer's only 22. So by the time Bennington's contract's up, he'll only be 26. So if he's good,
so a restricted free agent.
Yeah, and if he's good, he'll just be entering the prime of his career, right when Bennington's contract's up. So you might be able to have like a little bit of continuity there, even potentially, if he sticks around long enough.
Yeah, and I think that's something that could really help as well. So let's say these guys, end up playing with each other for 3 years, right? That gets, as you said, a lot of continuity. I think that really helps, drive the competition, so to speak, but it's also the stability too, not just for the goaltender, but for the team.
Yep. It makes it a lot easier for guys to read off each other and stuff. Like, I think that's part of why that the trade for Ryan Miller didn't work out so well, is because he didn't fit in with the team very well right away. Like, they probably needed some time to work together.
They're really banking on Ryan Miller being like ready to bring us there, and he just wasn't. That was unfortunate. I remember being super excited when they signed Ryan Miller, because that was at the time one of the best goaltenders in the league, and that's what you felt we had been missing for such a long time. Just to be ousted in the first round again.
Yep. And he did not play well.
He definitely did not. No. Yeah, he was definitely average at best, and it happens, right? But and I do believe that there is some. Go ahead, OJ.
Oh, I was just saying that we just don't have any luck with goaltenders in this organization for the most part. Like, until Bennington is
right. I'm about to say until Bennington, exactly right.
Like, the one time you have like a fucking lights out goalie, he gets run in the playoffs and gets injured. So that was like that was like way long ago though, but whatever.
In '98,
Yeah.
Yeah. It's it unfortunately does happen, and it does seem that we've always had really bad luck when it comes to goaltending, even though we've had a lot of Hall of Fame goaltenders. It's just never really pieced together besides that 2019. I do have to say, though, OJ, you got me thinking. I do believe that there's something that said that the new evolution of the NHL is having a good 1A and a good B combo, rather than having the workhorse, right? I mean, having like what you have with Brodeur starting, 75 games every single year, I just don't see that happening anymore, because of obviously the metrics are going to take you away from that. That's the reason why pitchers don't go nearly as long as they do into games anymore and stuff like that. Obviously, they're throwing harder on average and stuff like that as well. But I think there's just more that it happens to the body that they want to be able to give them a rest. You know what I mean? So, Adam, let me ask you, would you rather have that, or would you rather have, kind of put all your eggs in, I guess, one basket, so to speak, with having like that lights out goaltender?
Yeah, I would rather just have more of a rotation, honestly. I think, like, back to what OJ was saying too, we've definitely seen better performance, out of our well-rested goaltenders for sure, and I agree with that. So I think having a good rotation is definitely going to be better, better for the team, and also, also better for the players as well, because they're going to get some time off, and if things get bad where they get injured, then we're not in a spot where, we're completely screwed either. So we've got some guys that are
Exactly.
in a healthy rotation. So that way they've been, getting some ice time.
Right.
Yeah, it's say what you will about Jake Allen, because again, I never really believed in Jake Allen, even when like he was starting to get brought up with Brian Elliott and stuff. And everyone's like, oh, this guy's a future, blah, blah, blah. I watched Jake Allen play, and I just never thought he was part of it. I watched him when I worked for the Blues. I watched him in warmups, and I just looked at him. I'm like, he's good. He's good. Don't get me wrong. He's just not the guy. Like,
Right.
But he did so much better when he had a lot of rest. When he had, was very well rested. It wasn't a back-to-back. Wasn't, hey, I'm playing 3 games
Yeah, I remember
in
those
a
games
span of 7 days.
Yeah, Benny was beat, obviously, he was our starter, so to speak. And then on occasion, you'd bring in Allen and he would do great, He was great as a backup for sure for Benny.
And I'm sure that is the case for a lot of goalies in the NHL, but it was definitely like apparent with Jake Allen that if you gave him like a backup role and I would say an elevated backup role, right, where he's playing more games than would have. Like,
he's not just waiting for him to get injured over. He's actually getting out there, a third of the time, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. 20, 25 games, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
But I thought he excelled in that role.
Yep.
And that's the reason why it was the same thing really with Brian Elliott and Yaroslav Halak. Halak was very much like Jake Allen in that aspect, where he looked fantastic, but then he just looked worn down a lot when it came to like a 3-game series in a week, and that's a lot of hockey to be playing right away. So I completely understand that.
Yeah. I mean, it probably is going the way of like relief pitchers and stuff in baseball, kind of like you were saying, where it's a lot easier to find goalies that are amazing if they can be well rested.
Yeah.
It's a rare guy that's an amazing goalie and also like just has an incredible endurance and everything. So
yeah, again, I just don't see those. And I think that even if they do have that, right? So the 2 goalies that have had like phenomenal lights out goaltending and also but also started a crap ton of goals were to me the last couple of ones I can think of. Jonathan Quick. Does anybody even talk about Jonathan Quick anymore? Right? He used to be the best goalie in the NHL, and now it's been subpar. I mean, yes, the Kings have not been great defensively. They've been trash, but it used to be, despite all that, Jonathan Quick just turned him away. And Braden Holtby, I mean, he tied Martin Brodeur's win record, right? And is he even playing anymore? You know what I mean? So stuff like that, I mean, I think it just wears down and it really shortens these guys' careers now.
True. Yeah, that's a good point.
All right, well, let's transition here and get off the ice and start thawing out the Busch Stadium here, because we have opening day right around the corner. Very, very exciting here. And I want to read off to you guys, because I have this here, the projected roster for the Cardinals. Now, this is based on Fangraphs. You guys ready to hear what Fangraphs has to say about the roster?
Yeah, sure.
All right, so they have, this is the projected lineup at least. Tommy Edman playing shortstop. I think we all kind of knew that. Neal batting second in center field. We have Goldie at first. Nato at third. Contreras at catcher. I almost at center. I read that wrong. Newbar playing left. Then they have, as our DH, Jordan Walker. They have Jordan Walker on our roster, and they believe that, according to Fangraphs, that he will be playing outfield and be DH for quite a while for the organization. Brandon Donovan at second, Carlson in right field. What do you guys think about that lineup specifically?
Well, so I love it. Honestly, I think our lineup's going to be great this year. I almost kind of want to send Jordan Walker down. And I'm not going to be mad if they bring him up, because I'm excited to see him play for real. But I did see somebody mention that he's hitting like 170 or something since his shoulder injury. So I don't think that the injury necessarily has much to do with it. I don't know. But
right.
Either way, he hasn't been hitting well as of late. So a lot of the gaudy numbers he put up were early in spring when the pitchers are still trying to get a feel for it. It may not be the worst thing in the world to just let him go down to start the season and then bring him up after like a month or something once he's gotten back into the swing of things a little bit.
Agreed.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I think that it's very interesting, right? Because I forgot about the shoulder injury. I mean, he was tearing it up beforehand.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. So what does that allow? Like bringing him up, is it good or is it better to send him down to allow him to like heal up and then bring him up at beyond like opening day, so to speak?
Let him kind of like get back feeling comfortable again in an environment where the stakes are much lower. Where you can take it easy. If he feels anything, you just take him out of the game. No questions asked because it's AAA. You know what I mean? Like
that's a good point. Protect your investment too in that aspect.
Exactly. Yeah. He's like 21 or something, right? Like
Adam, what's your take on this? I mean, what do you think about the roster?
I think, obviously, with your point back to Jordan Walker real quick is that, undoubtedly, sure. He's been slumping lately. He went 0 for 4 with a couple strikeouts last game. And, the thing is that I agree, since he's cooled off a little bit, let's send him back down, for a little bit, at least initially. That way, he can help his shoulder strain, and once he's healed back up, if he starts performing well again, call him back up, give him a shot, put him in the DH slot and see how he does. But I think it's the right move to not bring him up initially, and at least for opening day for sure. But yeah, I think that we'll still have a pretty solid lineup overall. From what I've seen. Even without him, for sure. I think, obviously with, from a DH perspective, probably Nolan Gorman will be stepping in there for sure in the meantime. And
I was just going to say that was a big part of my considerations that I didn't say. But yeah, like I think our lineup, like Adam said, is going to be good enough. It's not like we need to force anything.
Yeah, I mean, we've got, we have Goldie, we've got Arenado, we've got New, we got, we got all these guys, Brendan Donovan, et cetera. So, it's a pretty solid lineup overall.
Yep.
So I'm obviously, my concern is not necessarily our lineup. It's more, obviously, it's the pitching, especially right now. But, which I don't want to jump ahead, but definitely that's where my concern is here for sure. So
yeah, definitely. I mean, we'll definitely get to that real quick before we get into the pitching side.
Sure.
This is what Fangraphs has as the bench, and some of these definitely make sense, right? So on the bench, right, we only have 4 because obviously we're rolling a little bit harder for the bullpen, which makes sense, especially for opening day. But Kisner is the backup catcher. I think we all kind of saw that, even though Ivan Herrera has really had a fantastic spring training, I think it's very much similar to what we've been talking about with Jordan Walker. You allow him to be the everyday catcher at the AAA level, and then eventually bring him up when he's ready to start pushing Contreras. Especially if Contreras doesn't do well, I think you put Ivan Herrera in that spot. You know what I mean?
I agreed.
Yeah, I mean, the guy they brought up, so I never really expected Herrera to get up to the majors this year. They brought in this Trey Barrera guy, or Trace Barrera. That's his name is Trace, but maybe he pronounces it Trey. Yeah. I've heard some people say that. But I mean, apparently the dude's like a really good defensive catcher, but he doesn't hit for a damn. So it's basically your prototypical backup catcher. That's the guy I figured they would ride the season with. And so I think that, Kisner might be on kind of a short leash, like especially if anything happens to Contreras long term. Because, I'm not saying that defensive metrics are perfect, but Andrew Kisner graded out to be like, if not the worst, it was like close to being the worst catcher in the entire league last year defensively, like as a catcher.
And he can't hit either.
And he doesn't hit, exactly. So like if he doesn't improve in a major way, they're gonna bring Barrera up, and Kisner will probably be done as a Cardinal.
Yeah, I definitely, and I foresee that going into, the start of the 24 season. I just don't see, I don't see Kisner being on a roster anymore because it's not even been like a hills and valley with Kisner. It's been a steady decline. I remember when we got Kisner, there was so much talk about him. Oh, he's gonna push Molina out. He's gonna push Molina out, right? So then he got into spring training, and everyone's like, yeah, Molina's not going anywhere. It's just not gonna happen. And even now, when it's supposed to be his team because Molina's gone, he just is. That's it. You know what I mean? Like he's just not. He's gonna get surpassed. So obviously we sign Contreras. He's got to see the writing on the wall too. It's like, well, this should be my team. But now the team is going to have to go out and get a big name catcher because they don't believe in me. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's kind of the truth.
I mean, I honestly think he should probably convert to a different position and focus on hitting again because that was his whole thing. Like, I remember when he was still a prospect, people were like, oh, he hits really well. Yeah, people were hyped about him, but it wasn't over his glove. It was always over his bat. And I guarantee you his bat is not developed as well as it could have because he's been trying to be a catcher. And again, he didn't catch in college or in high school or anything. He didn't start catching until he was in the minor leagues. So he's only been catching for like 4 or 5 years now at this point. So whereas you look at a guy like Yachty that came up and did it, and he had been doing it since he was a kid. So like, it's not an easy position to learn. So if he hasn't,
it's not like going from second to shortstop or anything like that. I mean, it's
obviously it's a completely different position, 100%.
Exactly. You can't just plug somebody in there. So I mean, kudos to him for giving it a shot. But I think his best path forward at this point, unless he's improved a lot and we haven't seen it yet, in one of these areas, his best path forward might be to switch positions, go back to focusing on his hitting more, and see what happens then.
Yeah, but really, because Kisner's not the greatest runner, I don't see you putting him out in the outfield, right? So then where do you put him? You would either probably put him in the corners, either first or third, because that's where you put your slower players. Well, that's definitely blocked.
Well, yeah.
You know what I mean? You got Goldschmidt.
I don't think he's got a spot on the Cardinals.
Yeah,
like,
on the Cardinals.
Our lineup's so deep. I just don't think he has a spot unless he got way better at catching in the offseason. So
yeah. Which again, spring training too. Like again, especially with spring training, the defensive metrics and stuff really are not there because it's not like a lot of stat counters and stuff are really paying attention. You know what I mean?
Right.
But it's going to be interesting to see coming forward, right? And maybe we'll have a deeper discussion around like the catching and stuff like that when we get a little bit further into the season. And after we kind of know a little bit more about what Contreras is going to do, because he obviously hitting wise did not do great for spring training at all, but it is what it is, right?
Seems like he's kind of picked it up as spring training's gone on. At least,
yeah, but it's still.
Well, I'm just saying. At least I've looked over quite often while I'm at work and noticed, hey, Contreras just drove somebody in.
Yeah, no, for sure. But I think a lot of that has to do with the fact too that the World Baseball Classic is going on. So when you have a lot of the higher end competition, not to say there isn't high end competition in spring training, but some of the bigger names are gone. You know what I mean? Also, I'm not going to try to take away from him. He did improve a little bit. I shouldn't be so negative about it all the time, but he did improve a little bit. I just don't think it's the numbers that people thought you're going to see because you brought him in under a big contract to be an impact player. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's spring though. That's the thing. Like, you really can't count spring. Like, that's one of the absolute universal truths of baseball. Like, that's a law. Right, of baseball.
Right.
You cannot take spring training seriously. You have no idea what's going on behind the scenes. So I wouldn't have that conversation until we're like a couple months in the season and he's hitting like Dexter Fowler or some shit. Then we'll have a problem.
Oh, yeah, like that. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so beyond Kisner, there's only other 3 bench players they got for us right now. Juan Yepes, which I feel like we knew that was going to be there because he's going to be a guy that is going to be able to spell goalie and be in the outfield every once in a while, right? And he didn't do terribly bad. He's got some pop in the bat as well. Then they have Nolan Gorman, obviously for the infield position, kind of utility. They have a 4th guy here, and I've never heard of this guy, but Taylor Motter. We apparently just got Mater, yeah.
MTTER, yeah.
Yeah, did I say it incorrectly?
I think you said it right.
He's been playing in like all the spring training games,
Mm-hmm.
and like especially early on,
he's a
like,
super utility player.
Yeah, he showed some pretty decent skill at third base. One of the games I saw, I was like, wait, who is this? I guess they got him from Cincinnati. I guess he was in their minor system.
I think he came from the Braves actually. The last time.
Well, that's exactly what was the Braves. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's the Braves.
That's weird. There's a picture they have of him in on MLB.com when I watched their GameCast or whatever. He's wearing a Reds cap.
Gotcha. I think he did play for the Reds for sure, and I think that the Braves picked him for a minor league deal for a little bit, and then we just picked him up a little shortly after.
Well, good, solid minor league depth that apparently we're going to put on rosters for fun. So.
Yeah, so like I didn't know anything about him, right? And so I was like, okay, well, this is going to be interesting to see because this was a new name on this list. But I was like, okay, well, that'll be interesting to see how it goes. I read a little bit about him, but obviously I was more focused on just trying to get, the entire roster and everything put together of what, Fangraphs had and stuff. But he definitely looks like a decent player. And I really enjoy watching a super utility player. You know what I mean? I feel that it's like Cardinals' way too, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we definitely need versatile players for sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I'm surprised they're. Oh, sorry. I was surprised they're carrying him. That's all.
Yeah, that's what they got so far, and it might change. Who knows? And I think a lot of that is dependent on Jordan Walker. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it looks like
because. What?
Oh no, I'm just going to mention. It looks like he actually hit a 2-run homer. Looks like against when we played one of the obviously one of the games earlier this season, the preseason here in spring training against the Tigers. Yeah, spring training. And anyway, it looks like overall he went 4 for 4 that game. So yeah, overall pretty good stats. Looks like from what I can tell so far in the in spring training.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. I definitely like that, especially on the bench, and maybe it's a guy that he can prove it. You know what I mean? Like, hey, maybe you'd be able to spell Donovan because Donovan's gonna need a break.
A versatile player that also has a decent bat. Hey, that's a good, well-rounded player. That's great.
It's like So Taguchi back in the day. If you guys remember, I love So because he was so fast.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but he could play the outfield really well. But many people forget that he played second and spelled first base a couple times.
Yeah.
Like he didn't play the left side of the infield. But he did play second base, and he played pretty well. And he, played first base a couple times. He did make, I think, like a few errors, at first base and stuff like that. Yeah. But it's a different position. But he played phenomenal on the outfield. I love So Taguchi, and when we were able to bring him in too. But yeah.
Well, if you want to talk super utility, what about Placido Polanco?
Oh my gosh, Polanco. Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah. He was in the league for a long time too.
Long time.
Name I haven't heard in a long time either.
I know. Yeah, I remember if Polanco
he definitely played on the left side of the field. Yeah.
Yeah, if he was having a very bad day hitting, my dad would be like, "Oh, here comes Placid Polanco." I'm like, oh my god, what is wrong with you?
Jesus.
Yeah. With both of you knowing my dad, that definitely makes sense.
For sure.
Yeah.
Oh man. Sounds about right. All right. Well, let's talk about the rotation here. We've already talked a little bit about this. With Waino being injured, though, the starting rotation looks a little bit different. We have Miles Michaelis, Jordan Montgomery, Jack Flaherty, Steve Matz, and then Jake Woodford. Do you believe this is the right rotation with Waino being out? Let's start with you, Adam.
Well, obviously, like I mentioned earlier, it's going to be a tough. We're not going to really miss Waino per se because he's obviously not been the greatest as of late either. But obviously, our at the same time, it certainly will have a little bit of impact on that rotation, in my opinion, because we're already, lacking a bit anyway. So I think he's going to be out for at least a month or so, maybe a couple of months. But it'll be interesting. Yeah.
OJ, what's your take?
I think it's the right one. I think Woodford's the right guy to replace Wainwright. And the reason is he's had a phenomenal spring. He's been, up and down the last couple of years. And apparently the Cardinals keep telling him, work on your slider, work on your slider. And he added a bunch of break to it this year. And actually by that stuff plus metric, I don't know if you look at that. And I hate to use that because I have no idea how it's derived. So
calculated, yeah.
It's just another way to look at it, is that apparently his stuff is actually decent and better than Michaelis's or certainly Dakota Hudson. And so it leads you to believe that if he can command stuff, then he ought to be a pretty effective pitcher. And some people would even say he's finally getting a legitimate shot from the Cardinals, whereas before they had Dakota Hudson over him for no good reason.
Yeah, and that's my thing about it, is there's a lot of people that coming into this season believe that the number 5 starting pitcher should be Dakota Hudson. I am not a believer in Dakota Hudson, very much like I haven't been, like what we talked about earlier. I was not a believer in Jake Allen. Could he be great? Yeah. But is he going to be the guy? No. And I that's kind of what I felt like Dakota Hudson was. Every time he got a legitimate shot up in the MLB, he just got rocked, right? And I think that he didn't have necessarily a great spring either. So I think that this is with Waino being out, it made that 5th spot a much easier decision of giving Jake Woodford the chance. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, Dakota Hudson had a really good rookie season, and then he had his Tommy John. So now, no matter what, even in his good rookie season, his big problem is command. He just walks too many people. And actually a component of that would be maybe his stuff not being so good. It just doesn't fool people enough to get them to swing and miss. So He needs to attack the zone. But, that I guess that could, without good stuff, that can also lead you susceptible to getting hit. So, he's kind of between a rock and a hard place.
Well, I take a look at Miles Michaelis. Michaelis doesn't have swing and miss stuff, but he attacks the zone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he's got a bunch of different ways that he can throw the fastball at you. It's some of it's slight cut, some of it's an actual cutter, some of it is a hybrid 2-seam. So when you are a veteran guy that can be a little, let's just say, wily in how you throw the ball and be smart, it's the same thing with the adjustments that Waino makes. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think that goes a long way. But I like how Michaelis attacks the hell out of the zone. And I think Dakota Hudson puts too much pressure on himself to try to get the swing and miss stuff. You know what I mean? Rather than just try to attack the zone and let your defense do it.
Well,
just keep the ball low.
One big difference between them, other than potentially stuff, one other big difference is that Michaelis's control, at least when he came over from Japan, the grade on his command was super high. So he commands his pitches very well. So that helps him, even with not the most incredible stuff. He can still pitch in the zone consistently and pitch in locations where hitters aren't going to put solid contact on the ball. And, of course, pitch mixing and all that kind of stuff. Dakota Hudson's problem is that he doesn't have that level of command either. So he kind of is either in the zone or he's not, right?
It's kind of like Rick Ankiel back in the day.
Yeah, after he broke.
Yeah. That is true. Well, take a look at the bullpen here, guys. I think that we have touched about it here in the podcast a little bit with the bullpen, but I think for the most part, we all kind of knew what it was going to be. Obviously, your closer is going to be Helsley, as it should be. Mm-hmm. Your late setup guy is going to be Giovanni Gallegos, although he had a terrible 9th inning as a closer for Mexico and Japan. But
other than that, he had a pretty good World Baseball Classic, though.
He was shut out. He let up one hit out of 4 appearances. You know what I mean? Yeah. And you're taking on Japan too.
Exactly. It's not like he's facing a bunch of nobodies. Japan put their best team out on that field. Okay. For sure. And they have some really good players, and that's what I'm saying. So Giovanni got rocked, but no shame. Sometimes he clearly didn't have a real good sense of where anything was going. So he's just trying to fight through it. Like I watched it and he couldn't throw strikes. Like he had real trouble throwing strikes that night for whatever reason. So hopefully those nights are few and far between.
Which they were last year. He was phenomenal last year.
Right.
And so then they have the middle setup guys, Jordan Hicks, Palante, the same as last year. They both did very well. Eunice Cabrera as well in that. Chris Stratton, Zach Thompson, all of which we knew, right? The one here is Drew Verhagen, which I believe came over from the Japanese league we signed to, correct?
I think so. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. He's
so that's good face.
He's kind of a little intriguing. He's a guy to watch because he's one of those people where I was reading a scouting report about him much earlier this year, like before spring training even started, and they went really down. This is Birds on the Black. Guy went really in depth on his pitching, what he was going with pitching, and like Verhagen has potential if he makes some changes to be a pretty decent pitcher. And I think that's why he made this roster too. I think he's made some of those changes. So keep an eye out for him while he's out there.
Yeah, and I think that, we obviously have some success with the Japanese league and stuff like that because obviously that's where Michaels came from. And it's been a, fantastic addition to us and for our team, obviously. So it's going to be kind of interesting. Adam, what's your take here on the bullpen? I mean, obviously you and I went to a lot of games last year, have a lot of games playing this year. But I feel like these are the same guys that we saw last year.
It is. Yeah, I was going to say we've definitely seen, obviously Helsley and, Gallegos, I was going to say Jordan Hicks, all of these same guys, pretty much the same last year. I think that, our bullpen, with a closer like Helsley is going to be pretty decent overall. It'd be definitely interesting with, like, I was looking up Drew Verhagen in the meantime, and it's honestly his pitches are interesting. So it looks like, he's actually got some pretty mean fastballs overall, topping out at like 98 miles an hour. And he's got a pretty wicked curveball from what I can tell as well. So, I think that overall it's pretty much the same bullpen, but it'll be great to have a couple of these new guys too that help round us out.
Yep.
Yeah, I think so as well. Go ahead, OJ.
Oh, I was just gonna add to that. We have enough depth in the minors that even if we need another piece or two for the bullpen, I feel like we could probably just dip into the minors and grab some guys if we needed to. So I feel pretty good about it.
Especially for the bullpen, yeah. Yeah, the bullpen looks good. I think starting pitching is the one thing that we really, really need.
Definitely, more than anything. Yep.
Yeah.
And we kind of talked about that. If we were going to put any of our money to not go after a shortstop, to go out and get a starting pitcher. Even though having Trey Turner would be phenomenal, especially after what he showed.
Trey Turner, sure. But, I mean, he's also not the best defensive shortstop. So, I mean, that's going to hurt our pitching. Not to mention, you got Tommy Edman, and Mason Wynn has had a hell of a spring. And he might come up and be the starting shortstop in the future and push Tommy Edman back to second.
Right.
So I believe that
considering what the Phillies paid for him as well, obviously we don't have that kind of budget as well. It's crazy, $300 million over 11 years.
But hitting that grand slam in the 8th inning though, man,
for sure,
dude, that got me going, as you know.
No doubt, definitely. Yeah. No, during the World Baseball Classic, it was great to see that for sure.
But for me, if I'm gonna have a shortstop, I got to have the awesome shortstop defense, which Mason Wynn seems capable of providing.
The dude's got a monster arm, man. I would love to do is have Mason Wynn, and once he comes up and get a little bit more seasoned, you know what I mean, to have him and Arenado have like a throwing competition, essentially. Like, so you start at the third base or whatever, and you take 3 big steps back, and you're just trying to accurately peg it to first base.
Hey,
you know what I mean? like without a hop and stuff like that. I would love to see those two go at it because to me, they
wild.
both have just ridiculous arms. Yeah.
That would be fun. I would take Mason Wynn in that because I think
Oh.
I don't know if Arenado can sling it 100, dude. Because we saw Mason Wynn do that without much of a lead up. Like, you give him 3 steps, like, oh boy.
No, well, I'm talking about just like, well, I don't know. So we would have to do it like in a fielding position, right? So there's just like a basic ground ball. So they just essentially pick it up, right, and then throw. So they're just stepping into it like they would normally do. So not like a three step, but essentially like you hit that ground ball and then you start, like, let's just say they start at like the left gap, right? So like at the shortstop position, and then they take 3 steps back and then keep going until like they're in left field. You know what I mean? And like seeing them, and that's why I would take Nato because of the accuracy he shows. I mean, Mason Wynn's got accuracy too, don't get me wrong, but I believe that the accuracy will win over, brute strength, so to speak, when it came to longer distances. I don't know, but I would pay to see that. That would be fun.
I mean, Mason Wynn has excellent range too. Like, the only doubt about him, the only knock on him defensively was his glove, but that seems to have gone away. He hasn't made any errors this spring. He seemed very sure-handed, as a matter of fact, while making a lot of good plays. Like, I mean, you could be looking like almost a little cross between Ozzie Smith and Andrelton Simmons defensively, I mean, which would just be ridiculous. Like,
it would be pretty, yeah.
Like,
it is super funny too because it's what I read about Arenado was, and this was in an earlier podcast, I know we talked about it, was that his old manager from his Colorado Rocky days said, like, how do you feel about him like covering gaps or whatever for like a shift and stuff? Like, well, how do you think about him covering shortstop? And he goes, he's been doing that. He can. That's his range, is third base to shortstop, like the entire left side of the field. I feel he can cover. Well, they pretty much said the exact same thing about Mason Wynn, like on his scouting reports, is that this guy is so good that he can cover the third base side. So if it gets past the third baseman, he's fast enough and has the range enough to be able to hold the line. Obviously, he's not going to throw the guy out at first, but he can stop a double.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think is if you have those two guys that have that kind of ridiculousness of range, hopefully they just don't run into each other. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I think that, but it's exciting. It's an exciting time to be a Cardinals fan, even though there's a lot of still unsureness, so to speak, coming forward. I still think it's exciting to see these young prospects coming up, and hopefully we can continue to replenish our farm, get some pitching and stuff like that. But it does feel, I feel better now than what I did at the end of the last season, if that makes sense, of like where our future is going.
Me too.
Especially considering that we're going to really spend a whole lot of money right now. So,
Exactly.
Yeah.
All things considered.
Like,
well, we go on.
I was just going to say, if the best team you can field also happens to be cheap.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what we're known to do, for real. So we're known to farm, that's what a lot of our team has been known to do. So.
Yeah.
So to Gucci, man.
Yep.
Yeah.
100%.
I want to get to be a guest on our podcast someday. That'd be hilarious.
Well, you best get over to Japan then.
I know, right? I'll get him to sign my ticket.
I was going to say that'll probably take a little bit, but we'll work on it.
Yeah, exactly. Get him that social media. We'll
absolutely. Hey,
I need him to sign my jersey.
Follow him.
Yep. We'll tag him into this post and see if he responds.
We can talk him into again Shohei to eventually come over to the Cardinals too. Be like, hey, you know him, right?
Right.
Well, yeah. Between him and Lars Nootbaar, you'd think.
I was going to say
probably if he's the Cardinals has a little bit of an option now. Assuming we would ever spend the money on him.
Lars definitely, he definitely has a good reputation over there now. So he's got some clout.
Here's the interesting thing about this, right? So let's go ahead and transition here to the World Baseball Classic, because we've already kind of tiptoed around it. But I want to talk about specifically about Nootbaar in Japan. This was something that happened and good for him for Japan winning, obviously. So for anybody that does not know, they beat the U.S. in the finals 3-2. We'll talk about that in just a second. But Nootbaar, like Shohei was incredibly impressed with Nootbaar's how do you say his poise, and that's kind of the way that he presented. He talked to Nootbaar several times, and there were fans apparently, and this is on the Japanese side, obviously. So I don't know because they were speaking in Japanese through the like interpreter and stuff. Because I think Nootbaar only knows like a little bit of Japanese. I don't think he's like fluent in it, right? But essentially, he asked, this is Shohei asked specifically about what it's like to be in the Cardinals organization. I think that, he already talked to Albert at some point. We know that happened. And that was reported. For him to be asking Newt about that, maybe he's just doing his due diligence because he knows he's going to be getting this contract coming up and stuff like that. And that's probably what it is. But even the fact that he's asking specifically about the Cardinals gives us a lot of hope. And if he's asking what it's like to be in the organization, not like, hey, what's the amenities and what's the pay and stuff like that.
It's actually like how to play.
Right. He's like Ozzie Smith, who could have gotten a bigger contract by going somewhere else, but stayed in St. Louis because he liked the organization. He liked being in St. Louis, and he knew that not necessarily getting the biggest contract means we're going to win World Series. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I'll tell you. I mean, I'm glad we're talking about this because this is fun to talk about. This is one of the ones I'm going to hold out hope on it. I'm going to choose to believe there's a possibility we sign Ohtani. And part of the reason I'm making that choice is because Bill DeWitt, as cheap as he may be, may or may not be, I guess, but the dude is actually a baseball fan. It would be pretty hard to, like, if you had an opportunity to sign Shohei Ohtani and you're a baseball fan, you just can't not do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, he might go down as one of the, like, as the best of all time. I mean, I guess he probably hasn't played long enough to really get those accolades, but, like, he'll be up there in that conversation for sure.
The thing about it, though, is it really legitimately, you can't even calculate his salary because he's taking care of two positions for one salary. So, like, as you said,
DeWitt, at a super high level,
we know, right, exactly. So we know DeWitt is a little bit, he's not, let's say he's just more of a bargain hunter. He's frugal, right? He's not like a cheapskate. Yeah, exactly.
He's not
just
like
frugal.
super cheap.
I mean,
exactly. But he does look for the best value for his buck, so to speak. So
and like maybe this year, like, maybe they actually thought the best move was to go into the season without getting another starting pitcher. But I mean, I think that if you were truly not being cheap, you would have gotten one. So
but again, I think though, truthfully, like so like for me personally, I get my trash bags from Dollar Tree, right? Because it's $1.25 for things I'm going to be throwing trash in. Exactly. Yeah. So to me, that's the type of stuff that DeWitt does for some of these positions. However, he knows that, okay, having a stable infield, first base, third base and stuff like that, if he can, get better materials or better players, he's going to go do that. But I don't think he's like going to actively go out, and he's not going to do what like the Padres and the Mets and the Phillies are doing right now, just throwing money to throw money. You know what I mean?
And the Padres are going to really regret these contracts they're making because they're not a large enough market to sustain that, like the Mets are, for instance. Like they're gonna be in trouble at the end of these things, so they better win soon.
Yeah, when you're signing coach 10, 11 years, that you're
every
going to
player on their
feel
team is gonna. Isn't it like every player on their team pretty much is going to be with them till they're 41 or something?
Yeah,
making big money.
Yeah,
it's good. They're going to definitely be kicking themselves in the ass whenever they're all injured and they can't play. So that's for sure.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah.
But getting back to the Ohtani thing and speaking of DeWitt, I think that, like any price that you pay for Ohtani, it might be, okay, he sets the record for a starting pitcher, but at the same time, he's hitting home runs too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, you got to look at it that way, that essentially the price point that you're paying, you split it down the middle. I'm paying for him to be a DH and I'm paying for him to be a starting pitcher.
Well, it's going to be interesting if they can pony up that kind of cash while also trying to re-sign, 3 of their free agent pitchers as well in the meantime. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
that's going to be the hard
it's
part.
going to be hard to see them be able
But of
to
course,
do that. We'll see.
Ohtani is a pitcher, so
That's what I'm saying. But
he
I'm just
does
saying.
fill one hole there.
Yeah.
And the rest kind of depends on how some of their minor leaguers develop, because they do have some pitching prospects now that you can kind of start to get excited about. And some of them are closer to the majors than you might realize, too.
Then away from it. Yeah,
and obviously,
exactly.
who is it that we could throw in maybe for a trade as well to help, bring that number down potentially as well. So,
absolutely.
Maybe.
I mean, I think Burleson and Yepes are trade bait this year for a pitcher at the deadline.
Right.
Yeah. So, I'd like to see it happen.
Obviously, as a Cardinals fan, as you said, as a baseball fan, yeah. But I think that Ohtani would do incredible in St. Louis.
For sure.
I just do. I mean, I think that he would do great as a pitcher. I think he would do great as a hitter.
Yep.
Agreed. Well, at least Newt Barr's doing his thing at least. So he's buttering him up.
He's grinding that pepper.
Yeah.
By the way,
so.
Speaking of
you guys
now.
Go on, OJ.
Speaking of poise with Newt Bar, I mean, he really did. He had some tough situations. He showed more poise than Mike Trout, in my opinion.
No doubt.
Mike Trout struck out because he was I'm just swinging for the fences, full on, screw it. Newt Bar was in some tough positions, and I mean in this elimination game against Mexico with Japan, and 2 times I saw it, and he just calmly drew a walk. You know what I mean? He got behind 0-2 in a big spot where they needed to score some runs, and they had 2 outs, and he manages to draw a walk from that and keep the line moving, and then they were able to score runs. You see what I'm saying? That's composure.
OJ,
good
I'm 100% with you. I'm 100% with you because I feel that in today's game, it's either you strike out or you home run all the time. Yeah. No one walks anymore because they don't want to walk, right? Listen, it's not beer league softball, right? If it's a 3-1 count and a pitch comes in that I know is going to be a ball, okay, I act like I'm going to swing at it just so I can get a full count to give the pitcher another time, because it's beer league softball. Nobody wants to, take a walk in that situation, right? Because I feel I can do more damage hitting. But this is Major League Baseball. If you can draw a walk, you take the damn base. Not only is it helping your team in passing the baton on, putting more people on the base passes up, it's running up the pitch count on 100%. These pitchers. Because obviously, most likely in those situations, especially if you have a good at bat where you foul off a couple tough ones and stuff like that, and then eventually draw the walk, it could be a 10 pitch at bat. And that pitcher now is sweating over this. Yep. His composure level is going to continue to drop down. That's what when I was pitching, that pissed me off. Is when this dude, I just could not strike him out. I'm pitching these great pitches and he's just able to foul these balls off. And then all of a sudden I throw one and it gets away from me and it's ball 4 and he walks. I'm thinking about that for the next bat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, granted,
absolutely.
I don't have these guys, level of being able to be professional and stuff like that. But it does, I would even say Adam Wainwright probably has that something in the back of his mind going, great, now I got a runner on first. Or great, I just walked that guy and now there's runner on first and second. You know what I mean?
And obviously coming, obviously with this season too, with the bags getting bigger as well. So we're going to be seeing, more base stealing as well, coming up.
Or at least more attempts. Yeah.
Yeah, more attempts for sure. And obviously with the pitch clock, the pitch clock as well, it's going to put a lot of pressure on the pitcher to stay focused on that. So I expect to see, whenever you drawing the walk, you're going to have a huge advantage to that,
Yep.
So
that's why I'm a huge fan of Brendan Donovan, is because of the fact that the dude takes major league at bats. He draws so many damn walks.
He does. Dude, it's crazy. Remember that one game we went to last year? It was he got walked every time he was up to bat. It was crazy.
I have the scorecard. He was 0 for 1 with 4 walks.
Yeah, with 4 walks in one game. Yeah. 0 for 4 for 4 walks. It was nuts.
It's how do you go 0 for 1 and get 3 runs in the game?
He just stands there and he just
if that's what you got to do.
It's
and that's what I'm saying. Sometimes that's what you need to do is just take your walks.
To force them to actually pitch to you. Yep.
And it's not just Mike Trout, but it was Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado. I see that from them sometimes a little bit, where you get in a big moment and it's the fans are all oh sweet, Mike Trout's up to bat.
Yeah.
So Mike Trout's I need to deliver here.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hit a home run and win the game for us. And so he swings at stuff he shouldn't necessarily swing at.
Right.
Although in that particular at bat, Shohei Ohtani was throwing strikes. But all you need is a contact swing. Just get a hit, keep the line moving. But he's out there swinging out of his shoes. He swung at these strikes. He's swung through them. You know what I'm saying? Like, and this is Mike Trout. Mike Trout shouldn't be swinging through anything.
Really, listen, OJ, I love that you brought up Goldschmidt because that still, to me today, lingers the hell out of me. In when we were facing the Phillies in Game 1, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have Goldschmidt up, and you go, okay, cool. It's a full count. All he has to do is draw this walk, and here comes Nato, right, with bases loaded.
Yeah.
What does he do? He already made up his mind that he was going to swing the bat regardless because I'm the MVP. I got to swing the bat. And the ball's in the dirt, and he swings at it. And, it was just the worst swing I've ever seen. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I think that there's something to be said about that. Of you can do it because you've done it before. It doesn't mean that you can do it this time, or you should try to do it this time.
Yeah, because if the pitcher's not going to throw you a pitch to hit, then just don't swing at it. You have to make the right decision. You know what I mean? It almost feels like a little bit of, I don't want to say mental laziness. It's almost like the moment's too big for them. And so they're just like, I'm not going down looking, that's for sure. You know what I mean?
Yeah, bring in the beer league softball back into this, right? So, if you don't know, you start with a 1-1 count, right? Just so they get the games going quicker. But if a dude throws me 3 straight balls, like the second one, I will swing on I'll swing on a ball if it's outside the zone on 3-1 without the intention to hit it. But on a full count, if the dude throws it outside the zone again, I'm walking. I'm not going to try to hit it because I'm going to foul out, you know what I mean? Or I'm going to ground ball or pop it up or whatever. Screw it. I'll take the base. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I feel that in that situation, specifically the one I just talked about with Goldschmidt, he was handed first base. And he decided, though, I'm going to try to go up there and hit the ball because I want to hit. Everybody wants to hit, but play smart. You know what I mean?
Exactly. So, yeah, that's why I respect Newt Barr for doing that, taking those walks, because he knows he trusts his teammates behind him to drive them in. He doesn't need to be the hero, even though he's the big sensation in Japan. He doesn't need to be the hero all the time. He just needs to do what he needs to do to help the team win.
Right. Exactly. Which it's actually super funny. So I don't know if you guys saw the report, but his pepper grinder, a lot of youth baseball teams were doing that, and they banned it.
Yeah.
Oh, they banned it for real?
Yeah. Apparently some.
No kidding.
Yeah.
I've seen the videos. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
They love
a bunch
baseball.
Oh, they do. Yeah. But apparently it stemmed that some parents didn't know where it came from, and they thought it was a sexual act. And so
okay.
Understandable.
So, yeah,
I get it. I was like, why would they ban that? I mean, it's so, but I understand now. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense, for sure.
When you watch the little kids do it, it's even funnier. So, obviously we know Newt, who's he leans over, out of the way and does the pepper grinder. You clearly know, but you have these kids that are squatting down, with their legs wide open, and they're act like they're holding a samurai sword doing it. All right, bud. Yeah.
Oh man.
So, all right, so let's finish up our topic, I guess, of the World Baseball Classic. There's not much to talk about, obviously, since it's over. Japan, as I said, won 3-2 over the U.S. I just got one question for you guys specifically. Let's start with you, Adam. Did you believe that second place was good enough for USA? Do you believe this was a successful World Baseball Classic for USA?
I think I'll just say in general, the World Baseball Classic was just great for baseball in general throughout the world right now. And I think having this has been outstanding for the sport overall. Obviously disappointed that Team USA, didn't go all the way. But the fact is we were defeating, teams like, Cuba, Venezuela, Colombia, etc. And, and the fact is we got through, even with our loss to Mexico, we were able to get through all the way to the very end. And if we're going to lose, and only by one one score difference to Japan, I would say we had a pretty good showing, honestly. Even with all things considered, we didn't even really have. Obviously, we had a great lineup, but there were a lot of players that were were obviously very cautious about playing because we did see some injuries as well that occurred in the World Baseball Classic. But even with that in mind, I think we definitely did overall in pretty good in the 2023 World Baseball Classic. We had, this was playoff level pressure, I felt, in some of these
especially
games.
single elimination.
Oh, absolutely.
For sure.
Did you guys watch the Japan-Mexico game?
Yes.
That was so intense.
It was so intense, and there were some thrillers in there. There really were.
That's what I'm saying. Even beyond like Japan or US, sorry to cut you off, OJ, but like some of the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico game, holy crap! I mean, like as you said, like OJ, the intensity of these games.
Yep.
And Adam, to your point, like the playoff atmosphere, it felt like that. I mean,
it sure did.
I thought this was much more exciting than the 2017 rendition. But I was like, okay, that's cool. Like, you Team USA won, that's awesome. But like this was much more dramatic. I loved the run rule that was issued in this one because it acts into your strategy. But you have people stealing bases when you normally wouldn't see that in the offense. You know what I mean? It's always pushing offense. And hey, we can rest our starters.
Yeah,
I loved it.
Like we saw with Canada.
Great.
Yep.
Exactly. I feel that this should happen more often. You know what I mean? And more teams. I think that would be awesome to have more teams that would do it. I don't know if there would be anything like I don't know if like there would be a lot more countries that could even field the baseball team because I just don't know how popular it would be. But to see like Australia win a game, that was really cool when you didn't think that they were going to win. You know what I mean?
I just want to add really quick. I also felt the guys when they were playing with passion and they were playing like they really were enjoying themselves. It's not like one of those things where like the all-star game where they're like, okay, I'm sort of obliged to be here. And they're just like, hey, we're having a good time. Yeah. It's more like a vacation. Whereas this felt like they were truly passionate about going out there and representing their country. And they were enjoying the fact that they were doing so as well.
Yeah, Adam, I'll go back to the Trey Turner Grand Slam, right?
Yes.
When I saw that on a tweet and it was, I can't remember who it was. It was a manager. Oh shoot, I should know this. It was a manager in MLB, and it just posted, the reaction from the bench side by side with Trey Turner, and he just said, and people say they don't care about these games.
Yep.
That's all he said because that's what you felt when you saw the raw emotion from Trey Turner when he hit that ball. I felt that too. I mean, you and I were waiting in line to get on the field for the Battlehawks game day experience. And no one else was
paying attention
nuts. At that. And I tried to not scream because I got that excited over something that, it's like, okay, it's a World Baseball Classic or whatever would be. But that was just tremendous. It was an incredible moment. But you see his face too when he hits that. He looks up. He knows it's gone. You know what I mean? And then just like to get his entire the dugout going. Again, I loved it. I thought that they need to do more of this. It cannot be, once every 6 years. To me, it's going to sound stupid, but it can be very cheaply done too. So I think that they need to do this every 2 years, not every 4 years, which they probably would do, but maybe every 2 years.
I'd say do 4 just because it works for soccer.
Yep.
Yeah, it works for soccer. I'd say do 4. Especially because what I would like to see it become similar to FIFA where the clubs have to let their players go play. So basically domestic leagues would take a break and then everybody sends their people and you have just like a really awesome, intense tournament.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see because I'm a big baseball fan and I want to see the game grow more.
For sure.
So
I'm glad that we were well represented, but obviously I would love to be able to see even more of our players, not think that you basically be told, yeah, you can't go and play, obviously, because, due to, risk of injury or whatever. But at that point, I think that if we put some, we realize that this game is is not just for, exhibition at that point, but more for country pride as well, which, I feel like after this, it feels like there's a little more, this game has a little more merit to it,
Yeah.
Agreed.
We'll know we'll have made it once France has a team.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Listen though, and I gotta say this because there was a lot of people that I heard complaining that like, oh well, all these people should have had pride and have played for their nation and blah 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 blah. There's a lot of confusion and misconceptions about what happened.
Or whatever, and playing
no,
for Japan
not with
or
Newbar.
okay.
No, I'm talking about
he's talking about all the U.S. pitchers.
Oh, I see.
For the U.S.
I gotcha. Yeah.
So like with Kershaw specifically, Kershaw wanted to play. The Dodgers wanted to let him play. Mm-hmm. The insurance policies that come around the MLPA, so it had or MLBPA, which had nothing to do with either the organization or the player. They said they could not, and so that happened a lot where the player wanted to, and the organization would let them, but the MLBPA said no. So if anybody wants to bitch and say, well, they're not patriotic and blah 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 blah, they need to do their research and understand why that player didn't play. There are a few of them that said that they did not want to play or whatever because they want to prepare for the upcoming season 100%. But there's a lot of that happened too, where it was insurance crap because that was the reason why Waino got game 1. Yeah.
Right.
Well, and that's why I want to take the decision a little bit out of I want to take it out of the team's hands, make it so that it's like actually seen as a serious thing. Because like teams aren't holding it against their players in soccer that go play on the World Cup instead of like, prepping with their team. They're not going to hold it against them because it's a big deal. That's where I want baseball to get to. And, if it does get there, the insurance companies will have to suck it up because, I guarantee you they face the same issues over there with the World Cup.
Yeah, and listen, I'm gonna play devil's advocate here, OJ. It's completely different. MLB, compared to so soccer, you understand before really there was La Liga, the way that we know it, Premier League, Series A, stuff like that. There was the World Cup. You know what I mean? Not in the sense that we know it today. Obviously, the game has grown significantly, but it's always been a huge portion of the world game. So if things have different, it kind of revolves around the World Cup. I much rather have, the baseball, so to speak, in the universe revolve around MLB than the World Baseball Classic. I 100% agree with your point that they should just let them play because, essentially what you don't want to have happen is the MLB just go, okay, you know what? We're not allowing anybody that's on the 23 or the 26-man roster be able to go play this because you know what happens then? Germany wins the frickin' Gold Cup in the Olympics.
It becomes pointless.
Because that's what happened. And I'm like, are you serious? Germany. And I'm like, they had one player that was on the NHL roster. And, well, they had more than that, but one well-known player, obviously, who could not play. And it was Germany versus, I can't even remember who the hell they were facing when they won the World Cup. Won the gold medal. But I'm like, you're not allowing any, you can't let us represent the best of our country then. You know what I mean?
Right.
But
yeah. But how would so tell me how would it look with the world revolving around MLB rather than having a World Cup?
It's the same. It is what it is now. That's how it is. Baseball world revolves around MLB. You have players that are international want to come play, obviously in the States and MLB, and that's how everything happens. So, for example, okay, I'll try to compare apples to apples and try to, I guess, get my point across. So we'll start with soccer, right? So when Karim Benzema for Real Madrid wants to go play for France, well, Real Madrid already knows that he most likely is going to get selected for that, and they believe that, obviously that's a higher calling. There's a lot of time in between games, and they schedule out the World Cup so that way club pauses. Very much what you were talking about, OJ, right? But club pauses in that period of time. However, if say a player, say Benzema gets injured in the World Cup, right? And let's say it happens even in the final game, right? They have 2 weeks before they start club games after the World Cup. So let's say he's going to be out for 2 months, right? I'm just throwing out numbers, obviously. So now he's got 6 weeks that he's going to be missing a game. How many games is he going to miss in that 6 weeks? On average, it's around 5, 6, maybe 7 games, right? If that happened in baseball, in MLB, right? Most likely because we will have that 2-week gap, right? Because we have opening week that happens next week. So now you have 4 weeks, but how much baseball are you missing in that 5 or 6 week period? You know what I mean? You're missing a lot of baseball. And I get it 100%, but that's the reason why the insurance companies look at it a little bit more differently about, does this outweigh the benefits or not? You know what I mean?
Well,
now that being said,
not,
the insurance, I mean, it has nothing to do with the player. It has nothing to do with the team. But that's where the MLBPA needs to allow the players to be players. They need to let them, in a sense, let them be kids again. Because that's what I think a lot of like us want to do, is be able to go off and represent our country doing whatever the hell we want. We are like, all three of us are sitting on this conversation would love for us to like represent Team USA in Beer Fest. You know what I mean? Just like, the broken lizard movie. You know what I mean? Like, we would love to do that. Like, I think all of us kind of dream about representing our country in whatever specific thing. But there are things like our job opportunities. Like, if my employer came at me and said, nope, you can't do that because of your health insurance, you know what I mean? Be like, well, do I go off and do this, or do I stay in my job that's paying me a good amount of money to be able to afford my house? You know what I mean?
Right.
So
no, I mean,
I think that
my point is the insurance company doesn't care about all of that. They just care about risk profile, which obviously playing any extra baseball is more risk, or playing baseball in a more intense situation. But that's what I'm saying. That they'll have to get over that if it becomes the norm. But really, I don't know. I guess it would take enough players challenging it at once, because like you said, the World Cup was already part of soccer. So like the insurance companies just had to deal with that. And that's kind of what I'm getting at, is like, we need to make them deal with it here too. Although it's harder because it didn't start that way.
And the thing about it too is, like, with international soccer and these massive clubs, like their union, so to speak, is a lot more loose than what we have here with MLBPA, or like where everything's got to be very like, and it's the same thing with like the NBA PA and in NHL PA. They all have to be very specific about, like, everything's got to be spelled out. You know what I mean? But I will tell you this, right? So there's 2 massive injuries that happened in the World Baseball Classic, right? Altuve and Edwin Diaz. If the Astros all of a sudden, let's just say they don't do very well, and everybody can kind of point towards Altuve because that's what would end up happening, all of a sudden the World Baseball Classic ain't going to look good. Same thing with the Mets, with Diaz. Like, if all of a sudden now a new closer's got to come into the situation, and the Mets the Mets should have 10 more wins, but they had a guy that just can't close out, and they have their all-world closer that's injured because of the World Baseball Classic. It just looked bad. You know what I mean? Now, if the Astros I'm just again playing devil's advocate, you know what I mean, to what it comes to injury risk. If they come out of it and everything's fine, then cool. Like, everyone got off like scot-free, so to speak, on this. Now the conversation can be had of allowing more players to come through. That's all I got to say. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get it. I'm just saying, to me, that's short-sighted. Like, if you want the game to grow, you just have to put up with that. I mean, it's part of it, right? I mean, because what I would envision is having essentially the soccer set up where every country has their own domestic league, and then every once in a while they get together and do a World Cup, So I think that'd be pretty cool.
Definitely would be, it'd be pretty cool. We'll see, obviously, if that, continues going forward. And see how obviously the World Baseball Classic shapes up next time. I'm sure they'll make an announcement, after a few weeks here, once we get into the MLB season, hopefully about when the next one will be. But let's get into another massive tournament going on right now, and that's March Madness. We have some updates on the challenge pool here for the podcast.
I'm spanking.
And here we go. Yeah, I was just about to say, there's really no getting around it. So I have everything on the updates here.
That's an exaggeration.
OJ is in the lead right now. Now, this is before the games that have happened today. OJ was 27 for 32 in the first round. So congrats, man. You only missed 5. on the first round. You were 10 for 16 in the second round for 47 total points. You have a max score that you can score out at 94. Adam, 23 for 32 in the first round, 9 for 16 for 41 total points, a max of 95. So going to be right there. Now you have me, baby. I was 19 for 32, 8 for 16 for 38 points and a max of 67. Dude, Purdue screwed me.
Yeah,
Purdue,
that definitely screwed you big time. I was going to say, Purdue screwed you both, but yeah.
Yeah, Purdue screwed me too, but I also called the Kansas defeat to Arkansas.
You did. Yeah,
so
that was huge. That was huge for you, for sure.
That saved my bracket, for sure.
Absolutely it did, 100%, because I had Kansas, going up at least to the Sweet 16 and end up losing, though, in that one, which thankfully I did call UConn on that one.
Nice.
I will say, so the updated right now, this is with the 2 games that have gone final from the 2 Sweet 16 games. OJ has 53 points, Adam 44 points, and myself 38 points. OJ so far is 2 for 2 in his bracket for the Sweet 16 going into the Elite 8.
There you go.
Yeah.
How nice.
Anyways, I'm losing, so I don't want to talk about it anymore.
Womp womp.
It's been a very interesting. Yeah, it's been a very interesting. Very interesting March Madness so far for sure. We've seen a lot of upsets. Obviously, Virginia losing here for a call. Obviously, Purdue
Arizona.
losing to FDU. Arizona losing as well in the first round.
Princeton, yeah. That was a big one.
To Princeton, right? And obviously, who beat Mizzou then later on. But I think there's a lot that be said of these one and dones, right? So we're starting to see that more. These FDUs the FDUs that beat out Princeton, there's a lot of freshmen on Princeton. They just didn't have the poise. They didn't have the ability to know what to do in situations because they haven't been there long enough. And FDU, like 3 of the guys have been playing together for like 4 or 5 years. Some will even win in the high school. So I think that, again, experience does a lot for a team. The reason why we never really saw 16 seeds get upset is because of the fact that back in the day, there wasn't a lot of one and dones. It wasn't a lot of we play for our freshman year and then go immediately to the NBA. They played 3 or 4 years. You know what I mean? And so they have more continuity. Players are older. They have more experience. And so you're able to make those, late game decision or have that poise because you've been in those situations before. Now we're seeing upsets at an alarming rate. It's better for NCAA March Madness for sure because it's more entertaining. But is it good for the product, if that makes sense? Is it good for basketball? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the reason why I say that is okay, Purdue, who's been one of the best teams in the nation, obviously, they're not going to be, represented at all now for the next 2 weeks, obviously. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I think. I'm sorry?
No, nothing. I'm sorry.
It's fine. Yeah, so I just think that there's a lot to be kind of said when it comes to that. But all right, guys, let's go ahead and take a look at the last 16 teams that are in it right now. Obviously, 2 of these teams have been eliminated, but we're going to pretend like we haven't seen those scores yet.
Yeah,
and start talking about. Yeah, exactly. So let's reseed these teams. So we'll do it just like they do in March Madness, where we'll have 4 1 seeds, 4 2 seeds, 4 3 seeds, and 4 4 seeds, right, out of the last one. So out of this, right, who do we believe? We'll just have a general discussion here as the group. Which are 1 seeds? I believe obviously Alabama and Houston.
Alabama and Houston. There, right? Yeah, Alabama, Houston for sure are 1 seeds, no doubt. Obviously in my bracket, I've got Houston going all the way anyway. So.
Yeah, maybe I think I underestimated Houston a little bit. It looks like because yeah, I had them.
I almost picked Houston to win it.
Sweet 16.
I almost picked Houston to win it all. And I should have.
Well, I'm hoping they do, so that way I get some points up on OJ. So.
Well, actually, I'd take that back. I have Houston going out in this round. So.
Okay.
Let's cross our fingers for that, eh? Let's go Miami.
Yeah, I was gonna say right? I've got Houston and Alabama, going head to head in Or no, I'm sorry, I don't. No, I don't. I have Houston, Tennessee actually is what I had. But anyway.
Yeah, Tennessee winning it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just hard.
So with Houston winning it. Yeah.
But yeah, so
You sure?
yeah, I think that
Yes,
makes
I do.
sense
Okay, yeah.
as one seeds. Yeah.
Okay, so then we have two more one seeds to give out, right? So when you take a look at that, I don't necessarily look at just what their pre-seed pre-rankings were. I definitely look at how well they've done. And to me, when I look at this, I look at Texas and I look at UCLA specifically. Texas has just dominated their past two games. I didn't really think that Texas was as good as they have been. Obviously, they were 2 seed prior. But they have just played really, really well. What are your guys' thoughts on, making them a 1 seed on this new revision, so to speak?
I think it's a good pick. I mean, them in UCLA.
I was going to say Longhorns were definitely dominant on their way, Big 12. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, what do you think about UCLA as a 1 seed? Do you think there's another team that is more deserving?
Maybe UConn. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm a believer. Well, I shouldn't say I'm a believer, but I have UCLA going to the finals, so I think that they're a good pick for the 1 seed.
Yeah. Okay. So, so Adam, you said UConn would be kind of like your pick.
Yeah. Potentially. I mean, I had UConn versus UCLA winning it, but potentially UConn.
Right. See, I think that for me, UCLA is going to. I think that UCLA would be a little bit more. I guess like just a primed pick, if that makes sense.
That's what I have picked as well in my original bracket is UCLA. So I would probably go with them. But as far as if you wanted an alternative to that, just because I had them going up, I had them going up against UConn.
Well, so we'll put UCLA as a number 1 seed. And then, what about UConn being a number 2 seed, and maybe even like the 5th overall, so to speak?
I definitely would say UConn for sure. Maybe even Gonzaga.
OJ, what do you feel about that?
Yeah, I like that. Well, did we mention Xavier yet?
No. So like what I had in my 2 seeds, I had Gonzaga, Xavier, Tennessee, Kansas State, and then I had UConn as the number 1 3 seed. But like it's really hard to deny that UConn has been as good as they have been, right? Yeah, I don't know. So okay, I say we got our number 1s here. We got Alabama, Houston, Texas, UCLA. Now we need to make the conversation for 2 seeds. I definitely believe Gonzaga should be in that mix, and 100%. I believe that Xavier should be in that mix. So let's put those two like in the 2nd seeds. Now it gets to be more in the conversation, right, of who else should be there. So Adam, you probably believe UConn. Who else do you see as a 2 seed?
What about? Well, I'm trying to think.
It's a lot harder than you think it is.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, this is kind of tough. Man.
I mean, Kansas State, I guess, isn't a bad pick for that, right? Considering that's where they actually were at.
Probably. I would say that's probably your next best bet. Yeah.
Okay. So Kansas State as a 2nd seed. So that leaves us one more spot. Yeah, for the 2nd seed.
Oh, sorry. Man, I can't put Tennessee in as a 2nd seed. I don't believe in Tennessee at all. I'm completely surprised that they've made it as far as they have.
As far as they have, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you got OJ, who would you put in that?
Let me see. Well, it's a hard, because other than them, I'm looking at it. I guess I kind of like Creighton. There is maybe reaching a little bit, but for some reason I kind of like Creighton. So throw Creighton in there. Okay. If you're asking me.
So no, for sure. That's the whole thing we're doing. So Adam, what about you? What do you think that last spot in the 2nd seed? I think you said you were about to make a comment about Tennessee specifically.
Yeah, I was going to say based upon what my original assessment, I was leaning more towards Tennessee. but they've got that special skills as well that makes them what they are. But obviously, it's been kind of ugly recently, so I don't know.
I mean, like, I had Tennessee as a second seed, and Adam, if you have Tennessee as a second seed, we could.
Yeah, to me, it
okay,
makes more sense Tennessee. Based upon what I've seen so far, it makes sense to probably put Tennessee over Creighton.
Okay. So let's get to 3 seeds at this point in time. So the 8 teams we have left are UConn, San Diego State, Arkansas, Creighton, Michigan State, Princeton, FAU, and Miami, right? And I think if I said San Diego State, I think, but
yeah,
I
think
what are your
UConn for sure?
Yeah, I think so for sure. I think UConn definitely should be a 3 seed.
Definitely.
What about anybody else kind of stick out to you that should be a 3 seed?
Maybe Miami.
Yeah, I believe in Miami as well there. I also believe in San Diego State maybe as
Yeah,
well.
Yeah,
I feel like they've done pretty
sure.
well. They just haven't had a lot of competition, but they're a 5 seed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
I'd say
and
maybe
that brings us
between those two. Yep, go ahead.
I was just saying they're coming in as a mid-major, getting to the Sweet 16. That's a pretty decent accomplishment.
For sure. And as a 5 seed too. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So. Yeah. All right, that leaves us one spot here to be our last 3 seeds. So the teams we have left are Arkansas, Creighton, Michigan State, Princeton, FAU. So, yeah, so I was about to say, OJ, what do you think?
Well, let me see. I'll go Florida Atlantic. They're beating Tennessee right now. I don't know if that's cheating. But
yeah, I was about to say it's cheating a little bit. But yeah, exactly.
I can't help it.
He peaked.
Yeah.
You said we're seeding them. You didn't say we had. I'm not making predictions. I'm just.
Oh man! All right, so OJ has been disqualified. So Adam, what's your last?
Oh no.
Well, like I was gonna say, so you got Creighton. That was my, one of my thoughts.
Yeah, and so the funny thing is, I actually had Creighton as a 4 seed, but I re-looked at this. I believe that I didn't do Creighton enough justice as well. So I think that they should definitely be into a 3rd seed as well. I think the reason why I had Arkansas in as a 3rd seed just to the fact that they beat Kansas, but truthfully, Creighton has just played a much better.
Yeah, I believe in more Creighton than that, honestly.
So that leaves our 4 seeds here to Arkansas, Michigan State, Princeton, and FAU, right? Which I think is, fair.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fair for sure.
Yeah.
Especially since we know that Michigan State lost.
Right. And we know Arkansas
lost. Yeah. So that actually, yeah, exactly. So that tells us right there that the 4 seed should have lost, right? So the two teams that we have as our 4 seed have just lost. Now, we got Tennessee as a 2nd seed, and obviously, so they're losing to FAU. Well, who knows what's going to happen there, right?
But I don't have Tennessee as a 2nd seed. I have no faith in them.
I know, but I was just going with group majority there.
It's one of those things because I saw Mizzou play them and beat them twice. And then I saw Mizzou lose to Princeton, so I'm like, Tennessee ain't shit.
For sure. Well. All right, gents. Well, again, it was fun talking to you here, again, as we do every week here. Let's throw it over to Adam. It talks a little bit about our social media stuff that we got going on. Adam, what do we have here in the social media?
Yeah, well, I just want to say, you can stay up to date with all of our latest episodes and make sure you follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/the Hometown Losers, and also give us a like on Twitter at twitter.com/Hometown Losers. Also, don't forget to share our podcast with all your family and friends. Of course, we love hearing from all of our listeners. So if you have any feedback, comments, or any ideas for future episodes, feel free to hit us up on our socials.
Sure. And, so Adam, are we going to put up a question for everybody, kind of do like a weekly questionnaire kind of thing?
Yeah, for sure. I'd say we'll throw up a question for our listeners. The question of the week is going to be, who are you most excited to see on the main roster this season for the Cardinals? So we'll throw that up on the socials. Would like to be able to hear.
Go ahead, Adam. Sorry.
I just want to say we definitely would love to hear from our listeners as far as, now that we have, opening day next week, coming up. Let's hear from our listeners. Who would they like to see on that main roster? Who are they excited to see for sure?
Yeah, I definitely think that's a great topic, especially because we just talked a lot about that in today's podcast. And a lot of excitement for sure, not just with us, obviously, but just for St. Louis baseball. So that's a very good question to post up there.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So we'll report back next week. So everybody get out there on Facebook, get out on Twitter. We'd love to hear from you guys.
For sure.
Do it.
All right, gents. It was great talking to you again. And as always, we'll talk to you guys next time here on the Hometown Losers podcast. See ya.
Hey guys, this is Adam. Just want to say thanks for listening to the Hometown Losers podcast. We'll see you next week as we continue our discussion of St. Louis sports.